So in this segment, we're going to be talking about the Brexit backing and ex-boss says UK needs more overseas workers, and I do find some of the stuff he says like relatively interesting, given that there are so many different opposing views of Brexit. I remember reading a study, I remember covering on the channel actually, that middle class people, some of the reasons some middle class people wanted Brexit was because they wanted less foreign people to come in to do jobs, and they wanted British people that they saw as unemployed, the ones that were the scroungers, as they would call them, to do those jobs, to fill those vacancies. The problem is that that didn't happen because the unemployment figure is a bit of a joke, let's be honest here. And there are certain jobs people in this country just don't want to do because the money's not there, or it's genuinely intensive, labour skills, and also the fact that certain people that have experience in those fields, literally in those fields, are just far better at it. Talking about like fruit and vegetable picking, but we have a skill shortage. It's not just in quote low skilled, which if you're an efficient farm worker, that's not a low skill. That's a skilled job, in my opinion. I've gone Sam Cedar on this. I've talked endlessly before showing you the clip, so we'll go to the clip.
We have got people queuing up to come to this country to pick crops that are rotting in fields, to work in warehouses that otherwise wouldn't be operable, and we're not letting them in. And we have to take a different approach to economically productive migration. We have to control immigration, but we have to control it in such a way that benefits our economy rather than cripples it.
You were
And like the idea that we'd have a visa-free system or an Australian points-based system, like the problem I think even with the Australian points-based system is even if you have enough points, you still have to apply for a visa. Visas cost money. There is the NHS surcharge as well. Whilst if you live within the EU, there's no visa requirement. So if you're, say, I think someone going from Germany to Spain, for example, if you want to do seasonal work for whatever reason, there's no visa requirement. So if you want to do that for the UK, there is a visa requirement. It costs money. Paperwork is difficult. Sometimes there's a language barrier in the way. The forms are a nightmare to fill out. Even myself, as a native English speaker, I hate doing them. They're rubbish. So imagine if English is your second language, it would be quite difficult, especially when there's really no one to help you out.
pro-Brexit business person, not and perhaps in a slight minority in that sense. You got growth is down, taxes are rising, trade has fallen very significantly. Was this the Brexit you wanted?
I think in respect of immigration, it's definitely not the Brexit that I wanted, or indeed.
And what was the Brexit you wanted then in terms of immigration? That's the thing. Like, he wanted more immigration. He wanted an inflated labour market so he can try and pay people less because next don't pay people. The problem is, when you have a system like freedom of movement, you need stronger unions and worker protections. There's a reason why other EU countries have dealt with, an increased labour force. It's not because, through deregulation or this nonsense. It's you have strong labour laws. That's what they have in other countries, and that's how they deal with freedom of movement a lot better. So you protect workers in general. So it's not, the foreign worker versus the British worker. It's workers against the bosses. The classic dilemma, the one it's always been. Not, a Polish worker versus a British worker. That's how it shouldn't be, because that's how you get divided, and that's what the boss man wants. It's just, honestly, it's just so stupid that we've done this.
Many of people who voted Brexit, but more importantly, the vast majority of the country. And we have to remember, we're all stuck in this Brexit argument. We have to remember that what post-Brexit Britain looks like is not the preserve of those people who voted Brexit. It's for all of us to decide.
You won, get over it. And that's the thing, like, we were told to shut up. We were told, you lost, get over it, and you won, get over it. Now, this is what you wanted. You wanted an Australian points-based system. That's what they mentioned in 2019. You wanted, the Tories talked about having immigration in the tens of thousands, was never going to be achievable, but they wanted low immigration. You got Suella Braverman, who's a very, very right-wing person, especially on immigration. So you got what you wanted. If you support the Tories, this is your Brexit. Like, you cannot say, I would have done things better because I would have got rid of immigration rules. Like, no, you don't get to argue that. Sorry.
And when you look at the majority of people in Britain, I think they have a very pragmatic view to immigration.
They really don't.
Control it where it's damaging to society, but let people in who can contribute.
I genuinely don't think that's the case. I think that there is maybe not the majority of people in Britain, but a large amount of people in Britain would see it as, we've got, we don't need foreigners, we've got unemployment, so why don't you just put those people in those jobs? It makes sense if they have no knowledge of geography or expertise.
An incredible squeeze, the worst squeeze on income since the 1950s, and it only looks like it's going to get worse as people have to refinance their mortgages. What do you think is the outlook? You've got some retail antenna, some of the best in the business. What do you see for
Some of the best in the business. A guy who voted to make his business prospects worse. A guy who voted to make, the imports, because clothes are typically imported, to make his imports more expensive. I don't know if they have Next in Europe, for example, but if they do export to the continent, that's gone. The Northern Ireland market, that's going to struggle. So this guy who's been claimed to have these great business expertise, like, where they at? You could say Brexit is just one major mistake he's made, but it's a pretty glaring one.
next year?
Look, I think next year is going to be very tough. We're going to be in a recession. But
No duh.
I think there's a difference between recession and the end of the world. It's going to be difficult, but it's not going to be impossible. And
So you see how he frames it, says, oh, it's going to be difficult, but not the end of the world. Like, there's no in between there. You're talking a very, I don't think they're going to, as deep a recession as people thought it was going to be initially, but they're talking about it running for about over a year and a half. That doesn't sound great. It's not the end of the world, but then again, the Great Depression wasn't the end of the world, was it? But you wouldn't characterise that as not that bad. Genuinely, the way, like, the framing in England is, if it's not the end of the world, it's not a problem. I genuinely just don't understand it.
And the interesting thing about a supply side recession is that the seeds of correction are automatically sown. So as demand drops and factories begin to empty, then prices begin to come down. And we're already beginning to see factory prices for autumn, winter next year, spring, summer the following year, beginning to come down in dollar terms. So, we can already see the seeds of recovery in 24. We just have to make sure that we get through next year in good shape. I think what the one sort of silver lining to this recession is that we are in full employment, and there are lots and lots of vacancies.
The problem is the Bank of England are saying unemployment's going to hit around 6%, so that's not going to happen. We're not going to be anywhere near full employment. And, his argument that we need more immigration to come in, but we should be fine because we're in full employment, that means, like, when we do hit the growth phase, unemployment will go back down again, and we'll be hampered by the same problems we have now, which is a lack of staff. That's what's going to happen again.
Too many vacancies. It's one of the things that's causing so much inflation. So
that's not true. The thing that's causing so much inflation is typically the gas and energy prices. It's the energy prices and the some supply side issues, stuff with imports and things like that. But predominantly, it's caused by the energy crisis. So it's not caused by a lack of staff. Come on.
Whilst people will be squeezed, it's very unlikely that they won't be able to find work, and that's what makes this recession very different from, say,
That's not true, given the fact that unemployment's going to hit 6%. What is this man basing his facts on? Why is this journalist not calling him out? If the Bank of England are correct and unemployment hits 6%, that means there are going to be a lot of people not going to be able to find a job. Come on, mate. Let's be like, just why do journalists not do their job? Why do they insist on a bunch of YouTubers who have no journalist credentials doing their job? If we just go back for a sec, this argument that we'll be fine because people are going to be in employment, but the problem is right now, we have, according to him, virtually full employment. The problem is employers like Next and other employers are not paying enough for people to live. That's why we're facing so many problems. It's not wages that are causing the inflationary problems. It's energy, typically. Energy is the worst one. Energy is the thing that's pushing up prices for factories and warehouses and for the cost of living. It's just ridiculous, the statements this man makes here. And just kind of end on a lighter note here, we have another Brexiteer who's having problems. This is Weatherspoons. So Tim Martin said after finding labour, food and repair costs were substantially higher in Brexit Britain, putting further 7 pubs on the market this week. So he's put up 32 since September. And the fact is, if we look at, Brexit won't be the main, Brexit will be an underlying condition of a lack of labour, a lack of workforce. It makes sense. Because, despite the fact that people see pub workers as being unskilled, you still need a certain skill set to work in a pub. It's not the longest training regime in the world, but you have to be able to do certain things, and you have to be able to socialise with people, interact with people, which is not easy. Food has gone up dramatically, yes, to import food, which Britain typically does. That cost has gone up, despite the fact that we're not doing physical checks like the EU are. That's a big problem. Repair costs, the cost of staff. So there's a lack of construction workers we have in this country. So that pushes the cost of repairs up, and obviously the cost of getting in the tools and the parts you need to carry out general repair work. That's all gone up thanks to the B word, Brexit. So not a good week for Brexiteers. But is it ever a good week for them? The only time they celebrate is when things aren't as bad as people predicted. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.